Welcome back, everyone. Oz here, and today I've got some r/boomers being fools for you all. At this point, this is becoming a staple of the channel, no complaints here. But as per usual, I'll be reading the posts, giving you my opinion, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Posted by Hey Just Wondering. Boomer embarrassed his group of regulars into not returning. Boomer's story. I work for a little bistro/coffee house kind of place that's primarily staffed by college students. We're not strangers to unpleasant assholes who want to make service workers squirm, but I'd like to tell you about the old timers in particular. Now, I haven't been with my job for all that long, but knowing your regular comes quickly. The Boomer Breakfast Club was nobody's favorite, but they were mostly quiet except for one. Mr. Problem Boomer has been a jackass for a while now. You know the type, the kind to make comments about how we should consider becoming a bikini barista place and then sputters when one of our lads says he'd prefer if he could have booty shorts instead. The kind that bitches about the music being too loud and demands that it be turned off during their visits. The kind that barely buys anything and tips even less while taking up prime real estate for hours. You know, classic. The others had the decency to look embarrassed or annoyed about him, but never really shut him down. About a month ago, he finally crossed the line for the last time. He made a frankly gross remark about one of our gals and how she looked in her work-appropriate outfit while she dropped off their coffee. It made the poor girl's skin crawl, and she stayed in the back for as long as possible that day. When she scooted to the back and told the main manager, MM, what had happened, the manager just asked which one it was. MM slides up with a smile and tells him that she doesn't expect him to apologize, but that he will not be speaking to any of her workers like that again. He was left actually shaking and looking confused. I'm guessing that no one had ever told him to shut the fuck up in a customer service accent before. I'm told that they whispered amongst themselves for a while, and Problem Boomer's brother hissed at him to be decent and apologize, but he refused and then slunk out the door. We've seen no trace of them since, and honestly, good. Shame is a wonderful thing sometimes. Gotta love it when the customer service voice, something that's used and has been adapted to essentially appease people like this, is then weaponized against them in such a very fun way. Like, it has similar venom to a mean girl's compliment, but it actually has weight to it because it's unexpected, out of left field, and done by someone that usually is supposed to be serving you. And oh god, is it a treat and a delight when it can be used like that. Part of me wonders if this boomer in that group thought of himself as almost like the class clown, like, you know, the peak of comedy, the king of the laughs, and, you know, everyone just kind of tolerated him. And he kind of just went a step too far with one of his quote-unquote jokes, and, you know, the shame got a little too much for the group. Honestly, it would have been really telling if they just showed up without him. Do Silver 4644. Boomer mother doesn't like being reminded it isn't her house. Boomer story. My boomer mother lives with me and my spouse because she's retired and can't really live alone. Her brother-in-law, my uncle by marriage, is also a boomer as well as a horrid person. He is proud of being incredibly racist, made fun of my cousin who was killed for being gay, and made derisive comments about his daughter-in-law's weight after a difficult pregnancy that nearly killed her, and caused my cousin to permanently cut ties with him. As for my own interactions, when I first met him at 12, I made a stupid joke at his expense. He was irritated and had the completely reasonable response of taking a large swig of beer and spitting it in my face. So, onto the story. He called my mother last night and I excused myself because my mother always talks on speakerphone and I knew I couldn't be civil to him. At dinner, I asked why he even called and she said he had some questions, that he was going to be retiring this year. Then she mentioned how he was considering taking a trip to our area, and I knew immediately where it was going. I very directly declared, he will not be staying in my house. She made a really ugly face and asked why the hell not. My spouse piped up to say that he agreed with me and that my uncle is not welcome in this home. When we said we thought anybody who thought racism was great or that spitting on children was acceptable would never step foot here, she got loud and said she had no clue what we were talking about. I told her of my encounter and then she says, well, if I had been there, you were there. You tried to excuse it as how he didn't know how to deal with girls because he only has sons. And so she yelled about not remembering any of it before leaving the table. She grabbed her phone and began texting. She always uses voice to text because it's hard for her to see the letters. We both know that she must have been telling him what we said, which is why she didn't use it. I fully expect her to press the issue and try to make it so that he just shows up, thinking we will relent. My spouse and I both agree that if he shows up, We will label it trespassing. Edit. I should mention that we've had multiple other family members stay with us on various occasions, at her behest or ours, and never care usually. So she sometimes thinks of inviting people as a given right of hers. Edit 2. So many people asking why I let her live with me or that I should kick her out. I appreciate how supportive you all are, but I won't do it. I know it doesn't make sense to many, but I truly love her, and most of the time she is not this horrible. She was not a great mother, no. There was quite a bit of abuse, both physical and mental. Years of therapy have helped me navigate a lot of it and come to terms of where I will never forget it, but I'm willing to move past it for my own mental health. Anyways, if he shows up and says she promised him a place, then we'll have stronger words about it, but this is not that moment. God damn, I swear, if there's any minor inconvenience, Reddit's first response is, kick them out! Go no contact! Every fucking time. It is incredibly easy to be on the outside and say go no contact, but I guarantee if the roles were reversed, they would hesitate as well, because that's just human nature. Sure, the obvious answer is right there, and sometimes going no contact would definitely solve a lot of problems, but it's also going to create a lot of problems too. Also, good on OP for standing up for themselves and actually putting a line down that the brother-in-law will not be visiting for his remarks and past behaviors. Good shit. Keep him at, well, I would say an arm's length, but honestly get a 40-foot telephone pole and poke him away from there. Digital disimpaction. Saw one in the wild today and had to share. Boomer freak out. Every Sunday morning, my husband and I go grocery shopping. We go to the local Aldi that opens up at 9 a.m. Well, this morning we got there a little early, around 8:50. We pull up about 3 cars away from a silver SUV and the driver, Boomer McDouchebag, from here on out, shouts out his window, "Hey folks, you got about 10 more minutes." I reply, "Yep, thanks," and roll my window up. Boomer goes back to reading his newspaper. Well, about 5 minutes later, I glance up from my phone and see the employee unlocking the door a little early, so I grab my bags and husband and I casually headed for the door. Boomer McDouchebag must not have seen them unlock the door because he sticks his head out the window and screams, "Miss! Miss!" At this point, I turn around and he says, "I told you they don't open until 9! I said, "Yep, thanks," and kept walking towards the door, the whole time Boomer yelling, "Ma'am! Ma'am!" When I got to the door and it slid right open and I walked inside, I glanced back to a very red-faced Boomer get out of the car and slam his door hard. He looked absolutely pissed. He barrels in, finds the employee that opened the door, and gets in his face and screams at him, "You open at 9! Your door says 9! Your door does not say 8:55, it says 9! I am always the first person here! Always!" I literally just said, "Jesus fucking Christ," to my husband, and Boomer looks at us like we're the crazy ones, and screams again, just in case we didn't hear him, "They open at 9! At that point, his wife shuffled in behind him and says, "Gerald, that's enough. Let's get our things and go." So the whole time we're shopping, Boomer McDouchebag is flying through the aisles, dumping as much shit in his cart as fast as possible. Right before he gets to the checkout, a family with 2 small children and only about 10 things in their cart gets in line before him. He throws his head up towards the ceiling and absolutely screams, "Ugh! Oh my god! Oh my god!" The wife just starts casually putting their things in the conveyor belt like it's no big deal that her 7-year-old husband is having a fucking meltdown like a toddler. As we got to our car, we just caught a glimpse of him fucking peeling out of the parking lot, tires screeching and everything. I literally cannot comprehend how that guy has not died of an aneurysm or a heart attack yet. I could basically see the veins in his temples popping out of his head. Needless to say, we'll now be going grocery shopping at 10 a.m. instead of 9 a.m. My guess would be is this guy has an obsession with being not only the first one in the store, but the first one out. And because he couldn't have that and, someone got in the store before him, he lost his damn mind. That also explains why he lost his mind in the checkout, and why he was telling everyone that the place opens at 9 and kind of acting like a bit of a puppy guard. This man has very clearly never had to have been patient in his entire life. Contributions sad, 5655. Boomer prompted me to stop volunteering. Boomer story. I'm Gen X. For nearly 25 years, I've led Sunday morning birdwatching walks that were co-sponsored by the local park district and a birdwatching club. They were mostly fun, but then a change started. These type of walks were always a draw to an older crowd. It's the nature of the hobby. The original old-timers were always very polite, curious, willing to learn, and respectful. Over the last 10 years or so, the nice old-timers have been slowly being replaced by boomers. Now, I regularly deal with loud, opinionated, selfish, obnoxious, clueless, and rude people. Climate and science denial is available in droves. It's gotten crazy. Please don't block the trail for their park users. Please don't throw stones at the owl so it'll look at us. Poor owl. Yes, the joggers are allowed on this trail. Please stand to the right. No, I can't call the bird back because you want a better photo. Don't yell at the birds. That's not going to make them come back. Yeah, I'm okay with the hawk eating the squirrel. I'm not going to make it stop. Everything needs to live. Seriously, make way for other trail users. Stand in the right. As in to the right side of the trail in the direction we've been going. Can you take that phone call away from the group? No, I don't want to hear about Trump. No, I don't agree that evolution is a lie. I accept science. Stop throwing things at the animals. Please stay on the trail. Those are sensitive plants you're trampling. No, I don't agree that climate change is a hoax. Just look at the changes in the bird ranges. Yes, it is possible to stay on the trail, make room for other users, and not trample the wildflowers. The trail is 8 feet wide. No, I don't believe in Noah's Ark. Or is it possible we don't have unicorns today because the tigers got hungry? Every walk suddenly had one or more people ruining the experience for everyone, including the wildlife. I finally had it. What was once fun is no longer fun. I turned in my resignation. I'll go bird watching on my own from now on. The employee at the park district was very nice about it. They've been losing volunteers in other areas for the same reason. It's just sad. Edit. Adding this to address some of the comments about the park rules, breaking the law, and banning participants. The park wants to be very inclusive. They don't want to kick people out. They don't want to ban people. They don't want to be confrontational. If someone on the walk is breaking the law, including throwing things at animals, I'm supposed to report it to the rangers. The problem is that brings the entire walk to a grinding halt. We have to go to the closest parking area to discuss it with the ranger who was dispatched. Most of the time, unless the animal was actually injured or killed, or there was some kind of serious crime against another person, the rangers are just going to talk to the person, sternly warn them, and tell them to go home. Nothing more happens, so it's not worth reporting. It's what the park wants. I don't make the rules. I just show people birds, attempt to educate them, and try to be entertaining and informative. The parks do have a sheet with people banned on it. There's a copy hanging in the volunteer office space at the Nature Center. The photos are small and grainy. One guy was caught selling drugs at an activity. A couple of others physically attacked somebody, and there's about a half dozen creeps who can't keep their hands to themselves. I couldn't recognize any of the people based on those tiny photos. If any of those actions happened on my walk, I would definitely call the rangers. It definitely is really sad to hear that someone is giving up essentially what was a hobby of theirs, and one that involved volunteering because the people they were volunteering for were disrespectful. They weren't being paid for that. They were taking time out of their day to do something nice for other people, and there was, well, no respect for that. This actually does kind of break my heart on a personal level because back in high school and college, before I moved to Colorado, I used to do a lot of volunteering in Idaho. I used to volunteer at an ELS center. I used to volunteer at the food bank. I used to volunteer at the youth ranches that were down in Idaho. If you've been to Idaho, you know about the Idaho Youth Ranch. Honestly, my favorite volunteer place was actually a place called Computers for Kids, and I was essentially working as someone who would both scrap computers and, wipe drives and just do a bunch of just tech stuff, essentially, and that revolved recycling computers. It was a lot of fun. And I've really been itching to get back and do volunteer work, but stuff like this definitely kind of makes me hesitant to want to jump back into it. Wandering Scout. A. Boomer parents come to visit to escape a heat wave. B. Promptly undo every measure in my house keeping it cool while I'm at work. C. House gets unbearably hot. D. Somehow this is my fault. Boomer story. So, I love my parents, and fortunately they're not the usual tantrum-throwing Fox News zombies we've seen on here, but this cracked me up. We live in the same state, about 2 hours apart. It's usually a good 15 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit cooler at my place, and neither of our places have air conditioning, as we live in the USA's Pacific Northwest. It usually hits high 80s for a few weeks in my city, but with keeping the blinds and curtains drawn, the windows open during the cool nights, fans, a mister, and the furnace set to cool, where it blows non-heated air throughout the house. With good insulation, the cold night air usually lasts throughout the day, and my house stays at 66 to 72 even during the hottest parts of the summer. They don't do well in the heat, so they come to visit for a few days. I couldn't get off work for their first day, so I'm gone all day. It's supposed to hit 102 degrees Fahrenheit, where they're at, but won't break 85 here, even for the peak of the day, and then it'll drop into the mid-60s in the evening. For those of you who are Europe-pilled, that would be about 39 degrees Celsius. Imagine my surprise when I come back to a house that's 86 degrees inside. It's actually hotter inside than the outside air temperature of about 82 degrees. Like, what the fuck? Every window has the blinds not just open, but pulled up, and the curtains thrown back. Why? It was so dark in here, you needed natural light. Yeah, and the fucking sun turning my place into a greenhouse. The windows are open. There's zero breeze, so the trapped cool night air is long gone, and there's no benefit from breeze, and the hot outside air is just seeping in. There was no fresh air. The vents are all closed, meaning no air is circulating. It was so loud! They're both practically deaf. I have no idea what they're talking about. Same reason the living room fan was turned off. It's an expensive bladeless Dyson I got as a gift that's ninja quiet. Nope. Too loud! The plastic airflow deflectors were all removed from the floor vents and piled up on the dining room table. We kept tripping over them! You'd have to be Solid Snake sliding against the wall to come anywhere near them. The furnace is actually on. To heat. What? It's so confusing. There's a digital thermostat. You just press function to choose between heat, cool, and off, along with a desired temperature for heat. That's it. You know, you really should have researched how to properly insulate this place before you moved in. At this point, you're entirely justified to walk them through like a kindergarten lesson and go through. The sun is hot. We keep the blinds closed because it keeps the heat from the sun out of the house. We open the windows at night. Give them a bit of an instructional tutorial as if they were 5 years old, because if they're going to act like children you left home alone, then they should be treated like children that you left home alone. Not to mention, if they really want a natural light, they can just do something crazy and open the front door and go for a walk outside for a little bit. That way, when they get too hot, they can come back inside where it's nice and cool and not a complete disaster to live there. And also, they get their full natural light, all their vitamin D they want, without compromising the entire coolness of the house. I suppose they could feign ignorance and just talk about the fact they didn't understand what all the measures in place did, but at the same time, they actively dismantled his home and put it on the dining room table as some kind of sadistic trophy. Like, come on. TK 42,967. Boomer called the county on me and got forced to run a septic line. Boomer story. This was a few years ago, but reading of the story made me remember it. At the time, I lived in an unincorporated township. I had an issue with my French drain setup to my sump pump in the basement. The water table was so high out there that any hole deeper than 3 feet would start to fill with water. With my French drain clogged, it caused some standing water in my side of the yard. A puddle was on my property. One Sunday morning, this boomer sees me outside and tells me I have raw sewage on my property and I need to fix it. I explain it's clean water from my sump pump and went on about my business. About 2 weeks later, I had a note from the county asking me to give them a call about the standing water in my yard. I called them back and the guy says the neighbor called saying I had raw sewage sitting on my property. I asked him if he took a sample and tested it. He replied that he had. I asked if it came back as sewage. He said no. He asked where the water came from and I explained it was from my sump pump and I was shopping for contractors to come redo the French drain. He tells me 2 interesting things. 1. It is perfectly legal to have clean groundwater on the surface of my property. 2. Because I have a storm drain in my front yard, I can contact the county's engineer's office and they'll come out and install a drainage adapter into the storm drain that I can connect to the drain line from my sump pump to. The best part is he tells me that his neighbor still has a septic tank and was notified a decade ago that he had to connect to county sewage. His little temper tantrum about the standing water probably cost him about 10 grand to connect to the sewer line. My only problem with the standing water is mosquitoes. As long as you got the mosquitoes handled, we're good. I'm not going to have any complaints. But if you're not dealing with that, we got to have a conversation because that is... that can cause some problems. But if it's not sewage and it's just on their property, then the boomer shouldn't give a shit. But he does because he likes to be in other people's business. He has to have his grubby little hands all over everything. I do appreciate the wonderful irony that by him getting his grubby little paws on your business, it did end up with the unfortunate outcome for him anyways, that your problem was suddenly solved while he ended up with a $10,000 repair bill, or I guess, maintenance bill? Would this be a repair bill, a maintenance bill, or just like an add-on fee? Renovation fee? I don't know. Either way, 10 grand up the drain. Or out through the sewage in this case. March Embarrassed 353. Boomer parents haven't spoken to my 4-year-old girls. Boomer story. My parents are boomers. My dad is 64 this year, my mom is 61. I never had the greatest relationship with them, but I thought that would improve when my wife, 39 female, and I, 39 male, had my twin girls January 2020. They haven't spoken to them one time. They've made no effort to make a phone call, FaceTime, visit, nothing. They don't even attempt to contact my wife or I to ask how they're doing, ask for photos, nothing. Once a year, we get a $100 Old Navy gift card. On Father's Day, I sent my dad a text. He historically responds with a one-word response such as cool or nice. We were moving across the country on Mother's Day, so instead of his usual nonsense, he said, "You could have wished your mom a happy Mother's Day." I was a day late because we were driving through the desert at the time. I lost it. Not only have they never wished us a happy Parents' Day one single time, they haven't contacted my kids. I unleashed 4.5 years of rage, asked why they don't care about their grandkids, etc. His response was boomer-esque. "Oh, how dare you? You're so rude. We're so easy to get along with. We give you space. We know you're busy." The gaslighting starts. I asked how that's the case for almost 5 years. Then comes the deflection. "I tell people all the time how proud we are of you guys." Cool, Dad. I'm glad strangers know that you were proud of us, but my kids don't know they have a grandpa. I'm so mad rehashing this. I know that my generation and millennials are probably very well aware of this, but it's one thing to tell someone else you're proud of your kids, but it's an entirely different world to tell your kids that you're proud of them. Strangers don't care. They're like, "Oh, cool, I'm glad that your family unit is structurally sound," but your children? If they don't hear that, they're just gonna think they're a disappointment. They're just gonna think that they don't actually matter. They're gonna think that they're nothing to you, or that you're constantly judging them. Now, this doesn't mean to shower them like every day, "I'm so proud of you, son," but even just once, it can mean the world to someone. I also had no idea Parents' Day was a thing. That's news to me, honestly. But onto the bigger picture of everything, it sounds like they're just incredibly self-centered and really just do not give a shit about the fact that you have given them grandkids, essentially, which is a little odd because most boomers seem to be obsessed with that, but at the same time, I guess they just can't be damned to pay attention to anything that isn't themselves. Hence why missing Mother's Day by a single day led to a complete meltdown, while the fact that they've probably never wished the children a happy birthday and are completely absent from the grandkids' lives is very, very, very telling. Like, I know when I was born, my grandma couldn't be kept out of the delivery room. She was pretty much knocking down the doors of the hospital in order to see her new grandchild, but it definitely boggles and kerfuffles the mind that they're just completely uninterested in being a part of their child's lives. Cheese Weasel. Drunk boomer keeps woman trapped in bathroom because he wants to be her hero, and more. Boomer story. This happened a few years ago at a housewarming party, and to this day is still one of the most boomerish things I've ever witnessed. A friend's mom had just purchased a home and hosted a small gathering to celebrate. Amongst the guests were the host's younger sister, 40-something, and the host boomer, 60-something, male coworker. The boomer showed up early and was already noticeably drunk by the time the other guests started arriving. My friend and I were already there to help with preparations. When the sister arrived, the boomer was smitten with her and started dropping cheesy pickup lines. She was clearly uninterested and uncomfortable, but did her best to be polite and not embarrass or offend him. He was oblivious to the social cues while continuing with his creepy act. After about half an hour of tolerating him, she excused herself to use the restroom. This is where things got really interesting. A few minutes passed and we heard some knocking and shouting. The bathroom door lock was jammed and the sister could not get out. Just the hero opportunity Super Boomer was looking for. He made a beeline for the door and started forcefully twisting away at the knob, but it wasn't budging. In spite of his ineffective attempts, he wasn't letting anyone else get near the door to try to open it. He just stood there with his hand on the knob while insisting he would rescue her, and implying that she would owe him once he did. This went on for over 40 minutes, and he even wanted someone to bring him a chair so he could sit down while fighting with the lock. Thankfully, no one did. As luck would have it, his earlier indulgence caught up with him and he had to pee. The other bathroom was upstairs and he reluctantly stepped away to relieve himself, but not before reassuring the trapped sister that he'd be right back to rescue her, and insisting that no one else attempt to open the door as we don't know what we're doing and we could just make things worse. Once he was out of the way, my friend and I had the door open in under a minute. Turns out the hinges were a bit loose, allowing the door to sag enough to bind the latch. By lifting the knob while turning, it opened right up. Super Boomer returned just in time to see Free Sister hugging and thanking my friend and I for getting the door opened, and he was pissed. I told you not to do anything till I got back. As if he was making any progress, my friend's mom, being the good-humored saint she is, offered to get herself trapped so he could rescue her. The laughs at that were too much for Super Boomer's fragile ego. He left abruptly and the rest of us had a great time rehashing the whole fiasco. Bro literally expected her to come out after being rescued and go, "You've won this hole," and go home with him. Oh, buddy. Honestly, I have no idea what to add that's just not already obvious beyond belief. I mean, hell, he just sat there holding the doorknob in place, saying he was going to rescue her while blocking everyone else off. Dude was literally her dungeon keeper in this scenario and expecting her to give him a reward once he freed her from the clutches of the dreaded bathroom. Bro is straight up goober pilled. Don't forget, this is brought to you by GamerSupps. Use code ODDS at checkout. It's basically a caffeine powder that you put in your water, and I actually really like it. I use this on a daily basis. Don't forget that every purchase you make using code ODDS directly supports the channel. And if you want a personal recommendation from me, I would either recommend the Soda Pressing Pear or Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are currently my favorite flavors. And as a note, once we sell a certain amount of stuff, I get my own flavor and my own cup, and you all know I'm gonna choose some degenerate shit that's gonna make their PR team squirm. My goal is to make them regret partnering with me. So please, use code ODDS at checkout to make my dream come true of making a PR team squirm.